Hey guys, hello everyone and welcome. I have an echo on the line. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Jeneth Blackard and today we're talking with Felicia Isabella and our topic is how to be fully alive and getting to that by being fully surrendered. And I love this topic so much. I was at the PT yesterday and it was all about letting go. Like, stop the control, let go, be water. Like, these are the words that she had me follow. My husband just happened to be there because he's helping. And I just feel like now is the time for that full surrender that we are all really looking for. Felicia, welcome. I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit of just a nugget about how you got into this work. What does it mean to be fully surrendered and how you found that on your own?
This work was a process that feels like it's continually happening. So I wouldn't even say there was a starting point, but over time, through going inward and healing so many different parts of me and learning about all these developmental needs that we have and how we can get them met as adults, like it's never too late. Something started to happen. It's like more space opened up within me. And when more space opens up, there's a disidentification that happens. And it's like your view of self and of reality starts to get wider. And the wider it gets, it's like, and then when we work with these inner parts of ourself or inner child parts of ourself, and we regulate our bodies and we create a feeling of safety in these primal bodies, then surrender gets easier and easier. And it's actually more of a natural state to rest into beingness. So from the ground of being, now we can take action in the world. Now we can be receptive and available to hear those like intuitive guidance or those nudges, and then to move from them with all of our body online with it too, with all of our body feeling like it's okay to make those shifts, especially if we're stepping out of a norm. And so that was my journey. And I know that's the broad way to say it. At some point, maybe we can get into more specifics. But yeah, I would say like learning to operate from that place has shifted my life in so many beautiful ways that it's really miraculous. And so I've built a really deep trust in moving in the world from a surrendered state. That it's become so doubtless. So even if I'm stepping into a new area of life, I'm taking on a new project, I'm in a new territory that has a lot of like edginess and is like poking a lot of old wounded spots, because I've developed such a depth of trust and surrender. It's like there's always something greater that's holding my experience, embracing my experience, and guiding me through that. And the benefit too of that is that my work is supporting others. And so when there's like a realization of a trust and surrender, and you practiced and moved and walked from that, it's becomes a lot easier to recognize that in another person, and to view that person in with the eyes of like a doubtless knowing in their capacity to return to that. It makes the opening to it much easier for other people as well. And that's been my great honor to be in that role.
Yeah, we've both been on the surrender path, so to speak, and control seems to keep coming up. What processes and systems do you use to get yourself like out of control when you find yourself controlling yourself?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I do is I notice that control is happening. And I know it sounds like such a simple step, but what can happen when we're caught in an identity of control is like, we'll get to the end of the day and we'll realize we've been holding our bodies tight and tense and gripping all day, and we won't even know why. So it actually is like, it puts us in a really advantageous place to be able to actually find the moment it's happening, the moment there's like a behavior that's coming into our life, and to be like, oh, control is happening through me right now. And are we identifying with it by saying, I am controlling? Or are we able to take a step back and say, something in me is acting in a controlling way. There's a part of me that is acting in a controlling way. It starts to remove the emotional charge around it. And even though there is still some charge there, I think the better way to say it is it starts to remove resistance to it. And we get a little bit of spaciousness, and we have spaciousness, a choice point arises. And now we can choose to do something with that. If it's available in that moment, we might be able to choose a different action, a different behavior. If it's not available in that moment, that's okay too. It's like whatever is happening and we notice it, we can do something with it. So let's say you notice control. Like for me, okay, if I notice that there's controlling happening in the moment, I see it and I'm like, okay, I don't think I can shift this right now. I don't think I can change this right now. Or I'll watch it and I'll be like, actually, like, I don't like this part of me right now. I actually feel frustrated with myself right now. And rather than making that wrong, I go out another layer and I say, oh, judgment is here too. Judgment was kind of like coming on top of control. And that's the one that often hides out, is we'll be able to see control, but we won't actually be able to see that we're talking from the judgment. So we can zoom out and go, we're talking from the judgment. Again, you have a choice point that opens because we're coming out of resistance and we're just acknowledging what's happening. So that's like the first thing that I do is awareness. Notice and name. The quicker I can do it, the better. And if I can't choose something different in that moment, if it's not available, that tells me there's something deeper here that's asking for my attention, that's asking for my compassion, that's asking to have a need met that maybe wasn't met in childhood. Sometimes I can create space for myself and give it to myself. And other times, if it's something that I haven't been mirrored, if it's a quality that I didn't know very well in childhood that I really needed, like, for example, if we were never mirrored boundaries, or if we were never mirrored warmth and compassion and acceptance, we may need to actually then go work with somebody who can mirror it to us. We can find that within our own being and then offer it to ourselves. So I'm always in curiosity of like, what do I actually need in this moment? Let me zoom out. What do I need? How do I offer that to myself? Is it through my own direct channel to the divine? Is it through another human being mirror? And then I'm able to develop those qualities in myself. And develop isn't even the right word, because we are all of these qualities. So if we feel like we don't have one, right, it just means that there's an obscuration. And I get to get curious about that obscuration so that it can dissolve and I can come back to a state of wholeness where I'm all things, and then offer that mirror to others as well, so they can find the bridge back to that quality of wholeness, whatever it is, and translate it to their life.
Yeah. Felicia, that's, yeah, I can receive that. How did you get to this place where you were finding in that curiosity? I know for me, I'm really been on um, a journey. Sometimes I feel really connected to source and I am choosing and choosing, and I will more places will make themselves available. But then my old constructs of, corporate and I have to do this and a controlling, and I always get it done if I do it in this mannerism, is my other side. And so to fully trust that has been, it's an invitation for sure. How did you get there? How did you get to that place where you are, you know, finding other choice points, that you're even looking at the controlling as the, outside, as a piece of you?
Well, first, thank you for sharing your personal experience. I definitely have some resonance with that, and it's been a piece that I've moved through over the years. And of course, there are still remnants, right, that I see. And now I'm able to use tools to get through it. So this is such a good question, because to me, it's not like a one and done. It's like sometimes we could have a really deep healing experience or a peak experience, and it feels like everything's different. But then when we get back to our life, right, especially if the way our life is set up, like if you're still returning to a corporate job and you're in that environment where it's been normalized to operate from that very like like high energy, control, like rigidly structured.
I would even say it's even further than normalized, right? It's a demand and a,
right.
you know,
It's a
an expectation.
in that,
Yeah.
you could say. Yeah. So we hold the whole picture, because to me, this work goes beyond the meditation pillow. It goes beyond session. It's a life practice to return back to our true nature. So if we use that information to our advantage rather than being afraid of it, and we hold this as like it takes reps and devotion. And I always liked the word devotion even more than commitment, because it feels softer. When we choose devotion, we can connect it to something that's bigger than us. So rather than how do I get through this job or how do I get through this day, it's what am I devoted to that allows me to keep choosing something different, that allows me to keep every day noticing what my thoughts are, noticing what part of me is alive, and then developing a different relationship to the self through reps over time. And so it's like the thing that popped out for me when you were sharing your story, Leonka, am I saying it right? Okay, good.
Yes.
Is the question I ask is, how are we relating to this part of us? And often it's, I don't want this to be happening. I want this to be over. I want this to be different, right? And
so
it's
we're a lot of resistance. Yes.
Yeah. And so what I would say to that is, how has this part of you served? Like, how has actually operating in that way been of benefit? Because in a lot of ways, it can create a lot of success. It can create financial stability. It can create all these beautiful things. So rather than casting it all out, we actually get to keep the gifts that the patterns have given us. And the difference is that as we heal, the discernment between the two starts to be more distinct, between like, what can I keep that's serving me and what can I actually allow to continue releasing and evolving and releasing and evolving. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And I love that you put it as a gift, rather than just me trying to shove it away and it have that polarity instead of the embracement of it. Because, I mean, in my viewpoint, the polarity creates, so that, being able to pull from those vertices and use that energy, creates. And I can see from how you painted it where I was not allowing that. And so then I'm in a stuck point, right? So then I was creating that loop that you mentioned before.
Felicia, would you say that all control is judgment? Like constructs locked in the body that's causing us to keep going back to the past to create these conclusions? What are your thoughts on that?
It feels more like fear to me. Judgment feels like its own thing, and sometimes they're often interwoven, like control and judgment. But judgment will interweave with so many of our parts, our like the vulnerable parts of us, the achievement parts of us. To me, it's an energy underneath it all, whereas judgment's like a quality. So it feels like that there's an energy, and when the energy is trapped, it isn't bad. It isn't bad. But when it's condensed or contracted or tense or dense, it's an indicator that there's probably fear that's holding it in place. And even if we get even bigger than that, like if we're talking about holding polarity and we go like, what holds fear? What is actually allowing this to happen? And when I feel that, if we go really meta, it feels like there's actually a way that our body mind systems are trying to survive, and they're doing the best they can. So underneath fear, there actually is a brilliance to the way that our bodies are working that are keeping us gripped in these patterns. And the issue is that they're just based in the past. These patterns are on a repeat because something happened in the past, or many things happened or didn't happen in the past that we needed, that the body's like, all right, well, I'm going to compensate because I'm not getting it. And then we turn into adults and we keep operating in this pattern of compensation. So part of the work is going in and allowing our consciousness to actually catch up to the present moment. So it can look around and go, oh, the threat isn't the same, actually. There's something different happening now. And when that happens, the control tends to relax. It starts to disarm. And if there's something underneath it that needs to digest or process, like a vulnerable emotion, now there's a registering that it's safe for it to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a return. Not to pattern, a return to wholeness.
One thing that we kind of had on our pre-call was that I really loved, really coming from this place of surrender to create with the whispers of consciousness. I kind of wanted to talk to you about how you create your life from this surrendered place and being aware of the whispers.
I would say this was a blessing in disguise, the way I stumbled upon this. So let me backtrack. So let's see if this makes sense. So I've noticed there's like two patterns that we'll operate from. We'll either have like this like super hard like drive, right? This achiever, this drive, this like I can go. Totally, Leonka. I was gonna say this earlier. And then also a lot of us have another side that's like, I'm afraid to take action. I'm afraid to be seen. I'm afraid to make moves in my dreams. I'm afraid I might fail. I'm afraid and it's kind of like the opposite, but they'll dance with each other. And sometimes we'll be really in one for a while, and then we'll be really in one, just the other one, just depending on the circumstances. So for me, when I was younger, I operated so much in that drive. Like, let me just go and do everything I possibly can and get it all done and be the best at everything that I possibly can. And of course, like that's not realistic or sustainable. So when I started like getting into this work and doing this deep inner healing and moving through a spiritual awakening journey, it strips you down. It's like you're raw and bare at a certain point. And so what that did is it kicked up the other pattern in me that I hadn't faced yet, which is actually this place that was deeply, deeply afraid of taking action from a very like heart aligned place, because it's so raw, it's so real, you're so exposed. And initially it feels like that because it starts to
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was where I went when it was time to actually start. At this point I had realized more and more of what my purpose was. It started to clarify, and it's still clarifying. I don't think it's any distinct thing that's ever going to end, but I started to feel this deep devotion to being of service and to supporting other people on the awakening path, and also on the path of creation, like creating, being the architect of their life and designing the life that they actually want. And it was very tough for me to actually step fully into that at the beginning. It was hard to get moving. And I sort of indulged that for a while. And I was like, all right, well, I'm having a hard time, or part of me was having a hard time, like stepping fully into a business owner and all the things that go along with that, and like being of service at playing at a higher level. And so I was like, all right, well, if this is happening right now, I'm going to find a pacing that actually works for me and honor that I can move slow if I want to. There's nothing wrong with that. And on the back end, I'm going to pour every ounce of my being into my own healing and mastering my craft. And I did that. Like I did that so completely and entirely. And because of that, it's like I used my pattern as a catalyst to actually explore how deep I can go with surrender. So if I'm not ready to take like massive action, what does it actually look like to deepen into a surrendered state? So I've explored this territory so thoroughly and continue to do so. And what I noticed started happening is my personality self started to gain more confidence with actually being in this role of support, because the way that I was stepping in, especially from the trainings and the schooling and the personal experiences that I'd started to have over many years, is what it actually feels like to surrender and become a vessel of support, where you're not actually supporting somebody solely on information you've gathered and not even solely on your own experiences. Although spirit will, God, universe, whatever your word is, will utilize you in the depth of realization that you've had. And that kind of determines a lot of what can come through you and be offered. And then it expands past that. So I got really comfortable being in this space of like not knowing, giving up knowing, surrendering myself over and over, showing up to sessions, so showing up to groups that I would lead, showing up to these containers where I'd offer support, especially one-on-ones where you're so intimate with a person. And I'd say, I surrender. Like, show me how I can be the greatest service in this moment. I'm available. Like, I am so completely available. And eventually it's like personality caught up and was like, oh, wow, really incredible things are happening here. Because I didn't go in and I wasn't like, here's our sequence. We're going to do this, this, and this. Although it's like that does have a place. We can bridge structure and surrender and emergence. And people's lives started changing drastically. Their quality of life, their ability to face challenge, like the work that they were doing would shift. There'd be massive transformations. Their families would notice the difference. Their friends would notice the difference. Their communities would change. Like, just massive, massive transformation. So that feedback starts to build evidence of like, wow, this is really a thing. I've known it because I've known it in my own life, but then to watch it happen through others is a whole other thing. And for my own life, it's like for the first, 2 years of my business, I just said yes to opportunities. And I know it sounds wild to say, and by no means am I encouraging not taking action, because there is a place where those worlds meet. But for me, because I chose to like use my fear as a catalyst to explore surrender, and I was like, I'll pick up action more later, and I'll really explore what it is to use drive and fire and that like achiever in me, but from a foundation, a basis of love rather than fear. So in those few years of business and surrender, it's like I started being invited to summit interviews and podcasts, and people would invite me to co-facilitate their groups, and I'd run programs with others for several years, and there'd be word of mouth. That's how I built my whole practice, with no website, no social media, no, like literally nothing tangible in the world. It was just stepping in to this space of surrender and saying yes, saying yes, saying yes, saying yes. And that that's taken me very, very far. And then there was the pendulum swing where I started getting the nudges of like, all right, you've got it down. You understand how this works. Your bank account is a reflection of this. The impact that you're having on people is a reflection of the space you're creating for experiences to be had through other people is happening. Your life is changing. And it's like, I felt the next nudge. So that's the territory I've now been like really exploring, is what is it to bring back in drive and more aligned action to amplify even more. But it's not from effort. And I had to go that way to dismantle efforting first, working from urgency and lack and effort, which is so many of the drivers, especially when we get into the entrepreneurial or business sort of spaces. And I started bringing in action from like this fire, grounded in love, grounded in heart, grounded in surrender. And I was like, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to do things. And I retreat was the thing that came through, is like, ready to do this retreat. And then someone invited me to co-facilitate a retreat. And it's like, it was so easy and simple and effortless. And then I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to be a little more visible. I'm gonna actually take initiative now. We're doing drive, we're doing action. I'm gonna start reaching out to people to share on their platforms. The first person I reached out to was like, oh, I actually meant to call you this week because I wanted to invite you onto my podcast. So I'm like, oh, we can stay in this like miraculous place of opportunity, even with the nudges and the drive and our own choice to take massive action.
Felicia, I just have to say, you make me want to feel like I'm going to do cartwheels over here, like that. Knowing that, and thank you for being so vulnerable with sharing that, and how you, golly, like it, just knowing that that's available for us, right? Is so, and I don't want to use the word exciting, but yeah, cartwheels is the is the way I'll describe it, because you're like, you get to have ownership of that, like choice, like I get to have choice here and trust. And that really juices me. So thank you for sharing that so vulnerably.
Yeah, you're welcome. It is exciting too. Yes to cartwheels. It's very exciting because it's like, I've noticed it's like we can get so fixated on healing. At least that actually was my experience for a while, because I went deep down the rabbit hole. It's like seeing truth for the first time ever, and even though it's confronting, and hard to face, like I went deep in. I was like, show me every single shadow that I have. I want to know it fully. I want to get in there. I want to like let's do this. And I did. Like I poured everything into it. But there was a turning point where it was like, hey, and check this out, there's also life happening. There's a way, like at a point you can poke your head up and emerge into the world and get to enjoy the benefits of all the healing that you've done. And sometimes it's okay to go in deep. I think there's a rhythm for each of us. There's a timing for each of us. Just recognize if there's a total disassociation from life, and we can bring that back in. And one of the things I love doing is offering that pathway for people, how to connect the two, so that they're not abandoning the places in them that are still asking for healing, and they're also not over fixating on healing and missing becoming, living, recognizing these beautiful qualities of what we are when we actually go in and start to meet what's there beyond the parts of us, when we start to meet what we are beyond our body and our mind, and we start getting into the territories of soul, which is a very real thing beyond like an etheric sort of concept. It's a very tangible, direct sensory experience when we open our awareness to connect with our soul stream, which carries its own wisdom, its own experience, its own personality, and it extends beyond time. So it also holds the wisdom from other lifetimes, other places, other forms of live transmission, transformative energy.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. I know that you do these activations and these guided journeys. Can you take us on a mini guided journey to, have us for the audience some experience on it?
Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I almost don't even want to give more of a premise. I think we should just go straight in. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to just close my eyes and connect and feel who's here. So for everyone here, you can take a moment and just close your eyes. And initially just notice where you go. Do you go up to your thoughts? Like, do you notice there's like a really fast pace happening? Is your mind really active? And rather than trying to change it, let's just acknowledge it. Acknowledge the pace that you're moving at, the pace your mind is moving at. Do you feel quick in this moment? Or do you feel more relaxed and settled? And how do you know that? Is it because of the way your body feels? Is it because of the speed of your thoughts? Rather than following the thread itself of where a thought is taking you, can you actually just notice the space around your head? There you go. So for me, as I'm speaking, I'm feeling this whole group body, and I noticed there was just a shift that occurred there. There was a little bit more, like a higher vantage point that just opened up in our group body. And each of these people listening in this moment are part of this group body. So take a moment and just notice with your awareness, like, can you sense that there are other people here listening to these words? We have so many senses beyond our 5 senses. Like, feel these threads of connection, even though we can't see each other. All of our awareness is on this voice that happens to be speaking in this moment. There's a connection point. And when we notice that connection point, we're tapping into an amplified field of energy. And in this field of energy, there's most likely a shared intention here. So all I'm doing is opening and getting curious to see if there's a seed of shared intention. And what's coming forward is actually curiosity. Like, there's just a lot of curiosity here. So what if we make the seed going into the unknown? Can we find a new level of familiarity and comfort in the unknown? So you can place a seed. You can imagine the way that it looks, maybe even see the word. Even in the realm of imagination, put this seed of familiarity and comfort in the unknown in front of you. And know that every person listening to this right now, if you feel resonant to it and aligned to it, are doing the same thing as you. There's a common action being taken. And when we take action with intention, we're supercharging. And what is it to drop this field without actually having to know how? Did you notice a part of you that came to the surface that's like, how can that happen? This is your manager. Say hello to your manager and welcome this one in. Her job has been to figure out the how in the past, and it's helped you to survive. Notice your manager. Do you suddenly just have a knowing that this manager is here? Do you see it represented as a small child or in some other way? Maybe you actually just feel it in your mind. You feel tension in your head suddenly. Often our managers live in our head. We're getting comfortable witnessing the parts of us without an agenda. And as you're witnessing, what is the quality of this witnessing? Is it a sharp, like penetrating glare? Is it curiosity? Sometimes what can happen as we pop out of our manager is confusion will be here, which is a very good sign. It's taking a step back from being merged inside the manager that wants to figure out the how. It can be unnerving sometimes to step into this unknown where you actually don't have a task. There is no task to complete. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of us. Do you notice the discomfort? Start to check, gently scan how your body is feeling. Are you aware that you have a body? Maybe it feels disconnected or spacey. Maybe it feels contracted and tight. We are permissioning and inviting forward any parts of us that live in the body in our field that haven't built a relationship of trust with the unknown because they probably have been burned in the past. And this time, notice if there is any threat in this moment, not the past or the future, right now. Is there anything that you can find that feels familiar or pleasant in this room, in this moment? The sound of a bird, the touch of a blanket, For some of us, it's hard to keep our eyes closed. What if you didn't have to force yourself to? You could open your eyes and notice a color in the room that's settling in some way that feels nice. Good. And so just there, I felt the whole field shift again. And we didn't try to change anything. All we did is acknowledge what's arising, and then we chose to add in an additional element, a resource, a felt sense resource. And they start to intermingle. There's a bridge, there's a meeting. This is how we offer resource and come out of contraction and resistance and into embrace of the moment and everything that's happening within us in this moment. And can you find any subtle difference in your state now from just a few moments ago? Let it count. Often when something starts to feel just a little bit more pleasant or even neutral, especially if you're coming from a place of a lot of contraction and charge and discomfort and resistance, we're going to count neutral as well-being. Can you actually allow yourself to notice any semblance of neutrality or well-being, an uptick from where you were just a few moments ago? You can offer a dialogue to yourself that says it's okay to feel good. It's okay to feel better. You're safe to feel better. Offering yourself a thank you or some gratitude for just being willing to go into this unknown space. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes if they're not already. That was a short version, but
Wow.
we did it.
It was amazing when you said you could feel the shift, because I would feel that and then you would say it and I was like, wow.
We're all so much more like energetically sensitive than we realize. Every human being has this ability to sense. So I love that you brought that in. But if it's something that's not normalized, like especially when we're younger, culturally, it's not typically normalized. We don't develop a word for it and we stop paying attention to it happening.
Mm-hmm.
But when we come into these collective spaces, it doesn't matter that there's only 3 of us on this screen. Energy and awareness doesn't know locality. So when we drop into these like really personal, direct experiences, we can start to connect to the all, and every person is included in the all. So we start to get these nudges when there's a change in the energy field. There's a change. Like I'll notice there's a certain frequency when everyone's in their heads or in their mental body. It's like a tune. It's a frequency. So when everyone shifts and drops into their body, or even their emotional body, the tune changes and it starts to get so distinct, which is really, it's nice to pay attention to that and let it develop more and more. Because that's the way I offer sessions too, is I notice the moment something shifts, so I'm able to point it out so their awareness can find it rather than being unconscious to it and stuck inside of it looping. And then it develops in them too, so they can catch themselves. They know the moment that they've come into a contracted energetic state, and rather than like not knowing and trying to push through the next task that they have to complete, or the product they're about to launch, or the whatever it is, we can actually sense like, oh, I'm caught in my mental field. I'm in a contracted state, or I'm caught in an emotion. I'm looping inside of it. I can watch that. I see the frequency of it, and it allows it to start transforming. And we can then take action from a place of oneness and expansion, which is, like I was sharing earlier, there's a lot more opportunities that come from that place. And when we're working from a contracted state, it's like it can look like you're doing a lot, but not actually getting much done So that's the other part of journey.
Yeah. It's
Right?
exhausting to do. I was really good at doing, I mean, that's what it served me was, I wasn't raised by my parents. So I had, I was really good at doing for myself and making it all happen, but it was not serving me anymore. And I was just burning out. And after a while, I couldn't even make things happen anymore as much as I was trying. Um, and I just know that that was because I had some more to listen to, right? I had to step into who I really truly have been asking to be, or that I already am.
Yes, that you already are.
Yeah,
I love the reframe. It's a good catch.
yeah.
Our language is so set up, right, for sort of confirming separation or confirming our identity as less than what we actually are. So it's fun to play with language in that way too. What are the words that I'm using and what are they actually contributing to creating? And I hear you too. It's like the work hard, do it all yourself, get it all done, like handle it all. It's so woven into the cultural fields that it's good to see it. And I've noticed it's like there's two different patterns that can flip flop, or some people resonate more with one and more with the other. So let's say you resonate with the got to do it all myself. There's a very specific inner child part that's looking for a very specific need on that. And it can be really supportive to lean into support. Whereas the other end of that is like the one that's like, I need other people to do it for me. I can't do it myself. I don't have the ability. I don't know how. I need other people. And they'll grip and grasp and merge for support. That's an inner child that needs a very different kind of repair. So it can benefit from the learning to connect with yourself and your own internal adult and your heart and your own direct channel to the divine. But we're all going to the same place. It all leads back to the same place of oneness.
I feel that embodiment, I mean, we like really have incarcerated some of these energetics in our cells of our body. It's literally like how many incarcerations have we actually, or conclusions maybe is a better word, have we actually like dumped in the cells of our body that keep us in this constant state of control so that we can't be fully alive. Just kind of wanted to open the door for you to talk a little bit more about like the body and this, because it's very clear that you are working through your body when you are doing this. Just thought I'd open the door for that question.
Yeah, this is a very rich question. I'm feeling all these threads open up of where we can go with this. So the body holds tension patterns. When we start to work with the mental field and we get it to a place where it feels safe to relax. And again, it's not an achievement. There's nothing to do there. It's actually we're learning to relate with where we have identities in our mind. It naturally relaxes. And then there starts to be more access to the body. And the more access we have to actually bringing our awareness into the body, it starts to highlight where these tension patterns are. And so we might feel it manifested all the way to the physical, right? Everyone's had the experience of being really stressed out in their neck. Their neck gets tight, right? That's the physical if it comes all the way through. But underneath that, these energetic tension patterns, these holding patterns, we can actually get into. And when we start to bring our awareness there, energy starts to flow there and it will bump up against all the tension patterns and start to bring up the expression that never got to express. And after a while, this is a very physical experience. So when I open and energy flows through my body, it moves my body. Like it will completely and entirely move me. And that's just something that starts to happen. We can call it Kundalini energy, life force. I call it dynamism. This energy, these natural flows, they have their own intelligence. Our bodies aren't separate from this field of these like flows of energy. There's a lot of lineages that acknowledge this, like through the meridian system and It's like such an infinite field that hasn't been fully explored. I like to explore it through direct experience, rather than, it's like we can start with somebody telling us something about this to understand it, but can we really understand it until we've had the experience of it? So I'm all for like question and try on, and rather than taking anyone's word for it. But when these flows start to happen in the body, we'll actually start to see where we're holding and where we're tight. Sometimes, depending on what energy, what pattern we're running, some of us, we're going to be really outside of the body, and the body's going to be more frozen, and our awareness is, our sense of self is up and out. And if you've been living in that your whole life, you might not even realize it until somebody meets you up there and says, hey, check it out. You've got another option to come down here. And suddenly it's like, the fish out of water, like you see where you've been the whole time. And another one that will happen is we'll come forward. So if you've ever had the experience of taking on somebody else's emotion or overwhelm or anything like that, that is where our awareness is actually coming forward out of our body. We're leaving self and riding the wave of somebody else's experience. So to me, it's less about like creating a boundary, although there's a place for that. I'm looking at the origin of the energy. I don't want a temporary solution. I want to actually see what needs to happen so that I can rest in my own being, where I don't actually need to have like energetic boundaries consciously, because if I'm resting in me, a boundary is there. It's inherent. It's a part of this. And then I may also need to voice boundaries and things like that. But energetically speaking, it's not an efforting. It's just where you're resting has inherent qualities. And the way that serves then, if we notice, like another way we can come forward is like, for me, I was just sharing this with somebody the other day. If I'm stepping into somewhere new that's unfamiliar, like if I like the first retreat, no, that's not even a good example. For me, it's speaking, because I feel really comfortable when I'm like dropped in and leading group experiences and one-on-one experiences. But like if I'm speaking, for example, this call, I haven't done a live call in a while. And so I had to like look at all the parts of me that were like, how's it going to go? What are people going to think? Am I going to say the right thing? And I caught it the moment it happened. I was like, oh, I actually came forward out of myself. I came forward into a hypothetical future. And I was scanning and hyper vigilant about people out there. So the moment I caught it, right, it's like, oh, that's happening. I've actually left myself. My energy is forward and out. I can make a choice. And then I've worked a lot of this piece. And when I say work, I mean, I've tended to those parts of me. I've embraced them. I've let them express. I've given what they need. So I've built trust with these parts of myself. And so in that moment, I realized I had a choice point, and it was available for me to come back into my own body and to come back into my knowing and my doubtlessness and my like. I've been walking this path for a decade. I know what's coming through me is coming from a depth of realization, personal experience, and being of service through an interconnected field of oneness. That's where I get to rest. That's where I get to speak from. And it's a choice. So these impact our lives in so many ways when we get into the somatics.
Yeah, that's great. No, I know that you put together a special offer just for this call. Can you take us through? And you guys, the link is below. When you watch this, it'll be below this video.
Yes, I would love to. I can't even tell you how excited I am to be offering this. Like, I am thrilled because I have been asking, how can there be an experience that's created for people if they can't make it to the one-on-one space here? And so it's like, I can see, 15 people, but then beyond that, like, then what? Like, how do we offer the beautiful things that happen in a session space on a more massive scale? And this is what came through. So a journey is an experiential audio experience where you actually get to put in headphones and connect with yourself. And if you're in a place that feels contracted energetically, or you're able to look at your life and say, I'm stuck here, I'm stuck here, I'm stuck here, I'm stuck here, it points you back to yourself without giving you information and saying, go do it on yourself. We're actually doing it together in the moment, in the audio. And it's a transmission, which means it's like alive in the moment. It's happening in the moment, no matter when that moment is for you, because interconnected field, we're timeless. That lets you become intimate with that contraction, that lets you get to know what's happening and gives you another option. So we open up the choice point together. You learn how to relate to yourself with kindness and compassion, and tap into your body's natural ability to self-liberate. And every person has this capacity. It just got clouded somewhere along the way. So we're reopening the trust in your ability to be in this self-liberating state. And not only that, but to come all the way through into a quality that you're claiming. So what are we stepping into, and what are we envisioning, and who do you want to be? And it goes even beyond who do you want to. This is an experience in becoming and claiming it and using choice and actually feeling what it feels like. And it's a bridge between the two, because we can get caught playing in this game of visualization, which is so powerful. But what happens then if we feel pulled back in some way because of our old patterns, or vice versa? So we actually need to connect the two. So our neural pathways, our body, our energy fields know the route from one to the other. And what that does is it allows us to stabilize our sense of self in these qualities of wholeness, like purposefulness and compassion and confidence and prosperity and charisma and intuition and whatever you're stepping into. And you have this then, so you know the feeling of where you want to act from. So the moment it's time to get on a call and do something for your business, the moment it's time to go on a blind date, like anything, do it from this place. And the impact of that is radical. And it creates a very different world than we live in now. So the more people that can experience how to find this pathway within themselves, the better. It makes your life better and makes the world better.
Oh, bless you for that. Like, for real, like, for choosing and then for being that oh gosh, guide to the creating that pathway.
Thank you.
Wow.
So many
That's
people
juicy.
kind of stick in vision, and some people don't even want a vision, right? They fall into this, like, I think I have a dream, but they don't want to go there in their mind so that they actually dream.
Yeah,
right?
and it's like, where are we creating the dream from? Are we creating the dream from a place of trying to get away from what is currently happening in our life? Or can we acknowledge the lack or the urgency or the fear, and then bridge it into a state where we're actually open and receptive, and vision will start to drop in? What if you don't have to create it and you don't have to define it perfectly, and you could take that pressure off and put yourself in a receptive state where you'll be shown?
Yeah. I do feel like surrender is the precursor to vision.
Totally, 100%.
It sounds like
100%.
I mean, there's people that, like Elon Musk, that just like have that gateway open, I think, on a constant basis, that it's just like everything comes, but some of us that have to work the gateway, I think that this is absolutely ideal for, because it has to do with surrender and moving from just an idea to an actual, like, how to create your life.
Yeah, I love that term. It's the gateway. Yeah, truly, it's the gateway. Because it's like, when we have this, we're cutting through not only whatever was conditioned in our family system, like our core family, we're also cutting through what was conditioned in our cultures. We're cutting through what's conditioned in the fields of our lineage, and any lineage trauma that's held through. We're cutting through even beyond, like, if we're looking outside of if we're holding all time, all space, we're cutting through any karmic imprints then held from other lifetimes or other experiences beyond what we know with this body. So it's the gateway, the bridge. It's so important. It's like connecting this is where the magic starts happening in life and allows you to stay more in the magic as the default and be able to handle challenge without getting knocked out completely.
Yeah, absolutely. Fabulous. Well,
Felicia,
Felicia,
I feel like I was going to say the whole time, I feel like I just kept, for those who are not on video, I mean, the whole time I'm just nodding my head. I feel like like my head is just going forward because everything you were saying, I was resonating with, and you would say the next thing, and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So thank you for sharing so much and being so vulnerable with how you shared too, and to keep coming back to share this valuable information and being that bridgeway.
Thank you. I'm so happy too. It's so fun to talk with you guys, Leonka and Jenith. You're both amazing. I feel very safe and welcome in your presence. So I appreciate you both.
Well, you guys, the link is below, and there will also be a link if you are not yet part of the community. You can join that as well. All right, you guys, thanks so much. We're out. Namaste.